For years, they asked voters for a chance to govern the nation. But right now, Republicans, the House of Representatives, still can't even seem to govern themselves. And that's other Republicans saying that. First, of course, came the resignation of John Boehner, all but pushed out of the Speaker's chair by the Freedom Caucus. That's the group of Republican House members who have picked up the Tea Party mantle. Then, Congressman Kevin McCarthy, who we all thought was going to take over, Boehner's number 2 in the House and the front runner to succeed him, said he would not seek the Speaker's chair. We're still trying to get the bottom of this, really why. Another victim, it seems, though, of at least the far right. So why have House Republicans become so dysfunctional so fast? Well, if you saw the Times column I'm about to reference, you know where I'm going here. Conservative David Brooks, and remember here, the writer here, certainly never going to be confused with some lefty. He suggests in part it's been a long time coming thanks to the rise of what he calls the GOP's incompetence caucus. Brooks writes, this new Republican faction regards the messy business of politics as soiled and impure. Compromise is corruption. Inconvenient facts ignored. Countrymen with different views are regarded as aliens. Political identity became a sort of ethnic identity, and any compromise was regarded as blood betrayal. Hence, the exit of Boehner and McCarthy. And now many are looking to Paul Ryan, the party's 2012 nominee for vice president, as the only Republican with a resume to be speaker. But even he may not be conservative enough for the far right. And if you think that Paul Ryan may not be conservative enough, you have definitely not been paying attention to where he stands on some of the key issues facing America today. And Andrew is here with just the primer here, a reminder as to who he is. And I remember, Andrew, in 2012, when I was with the wife and kids in Williamsburg doing the obligatory trip, right? And I hear his name, I'm like, my God, I can't believe Ryan is right as he is. And now some on the right say, doesn't pass the purity test.
And let's not forget some of the positions he held when he was running for vice president and also as the budget guy for the GOP. So let's start with his take on entitlements. Ryan believes in privatizing Social Security, so much so that his Social Security plan was rejected in 2006 by President George W. Bush for being too extreme. On Medicare and Medicaid, Ryan supports cuts that are so draconian they would essentially gut both programs. On reproductive rights, Ryan opposes abortion in all cases, even when they're needed to save the life of her mother. And he once sponsored legislation with Todd Akin. Remember Todd Akin? Mm-hmm. That legislation would have redefined rape to only include cases of forcible rape. And finally, Ryan's budgets have consistently called for tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans, even though independent analyses have shown that doing so to the levels that he wanted would have exploded the federal deficit. Rich?
So what's going on here? I mean, you knew Paul Ryan. You served with Paul Ryan. Smart guy. But the idea that he's not conservative enough, I mean, how did you guys regard him when you were in there, right? I mean, you can agree to disagree, but you never thought he was anything but really right.
Richard, I want to make 2 points. I want to follow up on the great reporting that Andrew just gave us. Number one, Paul Ryan's a really nice guy. And just for being affable and not being angry at the Democrats, the extreme right wing of the Republican Party views Ryan with suspicion and now calls him a lefty. So that's really wild. But there's something really shameful going on in the Republican Party, has been going on for a while. It's not just the fault of the small minority of 30 or 40 who are called extremists, the Freedom Caucus, the right, the wacko caucus. It's the majority in the Republican caucus who won't work with the moderate and conservative Democrats to pass legislation. Republicans decided years ago, and keep it up today, they won't pass any legislation unless they can do it in their own Republican caucus.
Well, they're part of a primary, right?
Well, they don't want Obama to succeed, to be successful. It is as cynical as that, and the Republicans at the national level, I believe, have given them their marching orders. Don't have any progress under Obama. Let's get the presidency back for the Republican Party, and until then, don't work with the Democrats. So it may sound odd or extreme, but I believe that is true, and history will bear that out, unfortunately, as a mark of shame, because I used to say to my Republican colleagues, who were committee chairs, men and women, in the majority in the Republican Party in the House, I said, Give me 120 votes. I'll get you 110 Democrat votes. We can pass anything because the majority of Americans believe in a common sense agenda. We can pass things regarding tax reform, immigration reform, infrastructure, things that Americans want to achieve. And they said, no, you don't understand, Steve. The right wing of my party, the Republican Party, will primary me and beat me.
You know, Charlie Rangel told me a story, and tell me if he said, I had guys that I served with 15, 20 years on the Republican side. And before votes or whatever, I'd go over to their aisle and we'd BS or whatever we do. I'm talking to a friend of mine, I forget who he had said, and 3 Republicans turned around, the freshman's or second term, and says, what are you doing talking to him? And I can't say on TV what Rangel said to him at that point, but the point is, he goes, when all of a sudden did this chamber turn into romper room? Did you see that for yourself, where there was a perceptible turn where we went into crazy land?
I don't want to call anyone crazy. Let's just say that...
Well, they want to shut down the very place they went to go serve.
That is true. And I had personal friendships with even those on the far right who I disagreed with completely, but we were gentle people, gentle men and gentle women, there to do the people's business, even if we disagreed on how to accomplish that. There are now a few people coming who are in the House on the Republican side, some on the Democrat side, who don't want to make friends, don't want to be nice. They just want it all their way, or they're willing to have nothing accomplished. Democrats suffered for that in the McGovern days. They learned their lesson when they got thrown out of the majority in the House of Representatives, and Newt Gingrich took over with a Republican majority. The Republicans are going to be learning that soon, that this scorched earth, all or nothing policy isn't right for America and isn't good for them politically.
But unfortunately right now it is right for their own personal political careers. We've seen plenty of polling that says the majority of Republican voters do not want compromise. They want ideological purity.
Especially gerrymandering,
kind of, right, especially with the districts that are catered just towards one party or the other. And so if you're a Republican congressperson, why would you make friends with a Democrat? Why would you cross the aisle and actually work on legislation with a Democrat? Because that's not what your party wants, that's not what your base wants, and you probably will face a primary challenge going forward if your personal career ambitions are what's most important
to you. Look at our good friend
to...
Chris Shays.
Well, one thing you can do is make sure that in the next redistricting, if you're a Republican conservative, and you don't want to be dictated to by 30 or 40 very extreme Republicans who don't reflect the majority of Republicans in this country, let alone the majority of Americans, is to put together districts that are more homogeneous and not as extreme, so that you as a conservative Republican can do what you think is right.
But now you're talking about state level elections, and that was something that I think Democrats dropped the ball on in 2012 after the last caucus.
But the Republicans, quite cynically but brilliantly, did that at the state level the last time.
Absolutely.
To give themselves the safest Republican seats, but now they're ruining what they have accomplished. They're regretting that they gave themselves such an extreme Republican district that they can't be themselves as more conservative, let alone more moderate Republican.
And I'll just say this. I just remember growing up, Speaker of the House, right? That was a great gig. Now, I mean, if you were a Tip O'Neill, you go back to LBJ's, I mean, you were the horse trader. Paul Ryan, I love how everyone's doing. He doesn't even want the job, right? And he's like, what concessions would I have to extract to even consider herding these cats here? That's how bad it's gotten. I mean, just think about it. It's one of the most unenviable jobs in Washington. Somehow, that's what the Speaker of the House has become. All right, when we come back, shocking numbers that show how out of control campaign spending has gotten. I know you know money in politics is a problem, but wait till you see just how bad, how only a handful of wealthy families literally controlling a huge piece of the pie.